So this video is an overview of how to conduct an advising session from both the perspective of the faculty advisor and the Student Success and Advising Office. So I'm Erin Baumgartner, currently Director of General Education, but also a biology faculty advisor.
And I'm Nikki Waite, the Director for Student Success and Advising.
Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to walk you through sort of a basic advising session from beginning to end and share some of the associated resources that go with that. Now, if you're relatively new to advising, you're going to have the opportunity to kind of connect with Nikki's office for some of their resources, and we'll get to those in just a minute. But first, we're going to kind of just start with the process of how do you figure out who your advisees are and how to connect with them. So the easiest way to do that is by going through the portal, and if you just click on Wolf Web, you'll go to the faculty menu and your advisors menu, and then you can just click on your advisee listing. Now, I'm not going to click on that right now because I have some advisees in there and their information is confidential, but this would basically bring up a list of my advisees. And then what I normally do is I simply set up in Google Forms. I'll make a little list of an advising schedule, and what that's going to do is I'll send out the Google Forms link to my advisees so that they can sign up for their advising time, and then they can fill that in with the time that they want. They can edit it online. They can make changes if they need to, and it makes it really, really easy. They don't have to come in and see me to sign up. They just have to do it on the Google form.
And then for Student Success and Advising, for any students that come in for advising through our office, we use the Wolf Connection system for our advising appointments. That is a feature that if you are interested in utilizing, we can connect our offices to see about going to get this set up. Benefit of Wolf Connection system for our office is it allows us to track our notes in there. It also is available if other advisors use WCS that they can see past history with the student. But having an online scheduling format is really beneficial for students. They can easily get in touch. They're not waiting to hear back from an email or trying to figure out when your office hours are if they're not in one of your classes. So that way their time is set aside so that we're able to focus on that student when they come in for advising.
Okay, so at the beginning of an advising session, especially if I'm with a new student, what I like to do is make sure that I have degree tracks up before they come in. So to get to degree tracks, you're still going to use the advisors menu, and then you'll just select degree tracks. It'll ask you for the term, and then you'll go to degree tracks. Now, we already have one set up. We have a simulated student account here. So what I would do is I would take a look at this ahead of time. I would look at where my students are, and it'll tell me kind of where they are with their academic standing, and that's an important thing to know. And we're going to talk about what that means, what those academic standing information means. So I'm going to let Nikki say a little bit more about that.
So any student at Western that is not in good standing, they could be on academic warning, probation, a continued probation from a past semester, or they can be on academic suspension. Any student that falls into one of these categories, if you see that listed on degree tracks, our office does advise them and work with them to make sure that any challenges or barriers they're having, that we're connecting with resources. So I'm going to explain a little bit of the process of what our office requires of standing students, so that if you see a student that is on warning or probation or suspension, you can refer them to our office, but then also you can check up and see how they're doing and see if they've connected with us, and then we kind of try to loop that full circle to refer them back to their assigned advisor. A student is placed on academic warning if their term GPA drops below a 2.0. If they're on academic warning and the following term they continue to have a term GPA below a 2.0, they move to academic probation. And if that happens again, they're placed on suspension. Students that are on warning or probation and their next term they get above a 2.0 GPA are placed back in good standing. So you may see some fluctuation if they only take one class or if they took it over the summer. It may change fairly quickly. What happens if a student is placed on warning or probation or suspension is at the end of every term, once grades have been submitted to the registrar's office, the registrar's office will send the official notification to that student of what their academic standing is, and then in that notification, they are referred to the Student Success and Advising Office. We have 2 different tracks for students that are in less than good standing, just based on how close they are to reaching academic suspension. Students on warning have 2 options. They can complete an online student success workshop that goes over what warning is and what resources are available to them, but also just refers them to our office, or they can just meet with an academic success advisor. Those students who are on academic probation, since their second term below a 2.0, we want them to come and meet with someone just to make sure that we're addressing what their needs are. Students who are on academic warning or probation, they receive a registration hold on the first day of the term or at some point after that email. And that's just a incentive for them to come and actually do the workshop or come and see us so that they know what it means for their standing and resources to help them. If students are placed on academic suspension, they actually have to sit out for at least 1 term before being able to resume classes. And if they happen to get a second suspension, that they are required to sit out a year. Our office works with the students who are returning after that break. They are required to take a learning seminar class their first term back, and that is taught by staff in Student Success and Advising. Attached to this presentation on our website, there will be a handout with some helpful resources for doing your first advising session. In that resource, there will be kind of a 1-page cheat sheet for the academic standing flowchart. So you can also refer to that for questions on how academic standing works. Our biggest hope with academic standing is that we're just getting the student connected with all the appropriate resources and helping them overcome whatever challenges they faced in dropping below that GPA and helping them get back on track.
So a good reason to be aware of where students are with their academic standing is because that's part of the conversation that I like to have with them when they come in. So if this is a new advisee, I will probably just start with getting to know them a little bit better, asking them a few questions about sort of what's brought them to college, what are their goals, what are they hoping to get out of their time here, and also to just kind of get a sense for who they are. And then at the same time, I'm going to walk them through the Degree Tracks system so that they know how to use it too. So Degree Tracks, and this is really important, the Degree Tracks is actually the university's official record of the degree requirements for each student. So if students want to see kind of where they are in their progress towards Degree Tracks is the best place to go. The requirements in Degree Tracks align to the requirements in the catalog. So if for some reason a program is looking to alter what's in Degree Tracks, they need to do that through the curriculum proposal process. Of course, what that means is sometimes between years when there are program changes, depending on the student's catalog year, which is going to be listed here under their catalog term. If the program requirements have changed and they're using a different catalog term, those may be different in Degree Tracks. So that's an important thing to be aware of. The other thing to be aware of is that if a requirement is not marked as complete in Degree Tracks, this little green checkbox here, then it is not marked as complete in the registrar's office. Sometimes people make a mistaken assumption that, well, it's not marked off in Degree Tracks, but the registrar's office knows about it. If it's not in Degree Tracks, it is a safe bet that the registrar's office does not have it recorded as well. The blue sort of squiggle here, what that shows is a degree requirement that's in progress. And then if it's red and not filled in, then we know that requirement is not quite complete. So those are things to kind of work students through. Now, sometimes it's necessary to make an exception or a substitution. For example, if a student transfers something in, so here we have some students who transferred in some biology classes. These are articulated from Chemeketa, but let's imagine that a student transferred something in, say, from a college on the East Coast where we don't have an articulation agreement. If someone is making a substitution or an exception to a requirement here, that's usually a department head or a division chair, somebody like that, that's going to be noted in here as well. So that is something that students can look for. And so those can be made in Degree Tracks. One thing to be aware of is that if an exception is entered in Degree Tracks, it does not affect the prerequisites at registration. So a student may still have to get that blue add drop form signed if they don't have a prerequisite even though that is checked off in degree tracks. So that is one little funny quirk there. So I like to go over kind of all of the basics of degree tracks with students so that they know how to read this and interpret it. And then as we talk about their plans for the academic year, what I will do is I will add notes in degree tracks, and I just do that by adding a note. You can choose a predefined note, but what I usually do is I like to kind of do a custom note, and I might describe what classes we talked about, if I recommended that they take a placement test before next term, something along those lines. And what's really great is I can always go back to those notes, but so can the student. So it's, of course, really important to remember that your student advisees can see everything that you put in these notes. So if they are frustrating you, maybe that's something to write down someplace else. But the other thing that's nice here is if a student decides to change their major or change their advising plans, then as they move forward, their new advisor will also have access to these notes.
And just a note on the note section, oftentimes there will come a situation in the future where a student will look back and say, well, my advisor told me A, B, and C. And it's really helpful to have those notes written down at the time so that it doesn't become a he said, she said scenario. So I use notes not only for, a resource for the student and when they come back to meet with you, but also as we've talked about degree requirements and things they need to get done like prerequisites or specific graduation requirements, that I can look back and say, look, on this date is when we discussed these requirements, so that's recorded if it ever the student ever tries to petition it or question it down the road. The thing I also like to do with the notes is, as Erin mentioned, those introductory conversations asking about why they're at Western or what their career goals are. The next time the student comes in, I can review those notes before they come in and ask them kind of a follow-up on our conversations from last time. I get really funny reactions from students when I do that because they think I have this great memory and that I just pulled that off the top of my hat, but really I just pulled it from their notes. But it really helps me keep that sense of connection with the students as we move forward, that they really do feel like I care about what's going on in their life and I care about what they're doing with their degree. And so as we move further along their degree path and away from more of the new student where we have to go through, this is degree tracks, these are your generals, these are your major requirements, so we move more into how do we prepare you for graduation or graduate school or internships, that we've developed that rapport over time and we can kind of shift that focus. Degree tracks is a really great tool, and my expectation when I advise is early on I'll teach students very much how to use it, but then over time I want them to be using it themselves and then coming to me with questions rather than just them assuming that I'm going to tell them. One area I think that is not very obvious for students that I always like to point out is right here at the top of the screen where it has the degree requirements. I think it's fairly straightforward to explain like the check boxes and you haven't met these degrees, but a lot of students aren't aware that you need 180 credits to graduate and you have to have so many upper division credits. And if they're a transfer student, they have to have 45 of their last credits at Western for that to count. And so they're not reaching graduation and having 11 elective credits to graduate, but their lower division electives didn't count because they weren't the upper division. So that's an area both Erin and I really try to make sure students are aware of very early on. That's not kind of a checklist type. The other feature of DegreeWorks degree tracks that I use fairly regularly is over on the left-hand side. There's this what if option. This is really helpful if a student is not 100% sure if the major they're currently in is the right fit, or if they want to add a minor, and this allows them to add whatever changes they would want to make and see what their worksheet would look like under the new requirements. Now in this test environment, it doesn't let us pick the major or minor, but what you would typically do, and the student is able to do this as well, so usually I'll just show them how to do it and then allow them to go and do it themselves, is under the select additional areas of under the primary, it's their, make sure you pick the most recent academic year, and then under the major, select the most recent one, and then you can also add a minor or a concentration. They'll show up under the chosen area of study drop list, and once they've shown up there, you go back up to the process what if button at the top, and it will look the exact same as their current worksheet, just with the updated information. So the student will be able to see how close they may be to finishing a minor in one area, or how close they may be if they decide to switch majors. So that can be a really helpful feature. Or another option is if they're a pre-major, for example, if they're currently looking at going to pre-nursing, but they want to maybe have a backup degree like biology or something else, you can do a what if, or if they stay in your major, that they have a plan of what they should be working on while they're maybe pursuing alternative plans at the same time.
Yeah, and this brings up a really good point. One of the conversations I regularly have with students, especially early in their degree process, is oftentimes they will come in and I will simply ask them, how are things going with your major right now? Tell me a little bit about your classes. And that gives us an opportunity to have some conversations, especially when they start to recognize that maybe they want to make a change to their major. And that can be a really important conversation. I find oftentimes students aren't always comfortable opening that conversation because they mistakenly feel like they have to stay committed to their major. I have had several students worry that they would hurt my feelings by wanting to change majors. So by opening that conversation with them, I think it gives them an opportunity to kind of ask the questions that they need to ask. And then we have the opportunity to investigate what happens when we want to make a change to a major. And so the way to do that is the University Registrar's Office. If you go to Forms, there is a form, the Major Minor Advisor Change Form, which is a PDF. I think I'm hitting the right button. And so this is an opportunity if students do decide they want to change their major or add a minor, or perhaps they want to choose a different catalog year because they want the major was just updated this year and they want to come in under those requirements. This is the form that you use to do that. And it's really straightforward. It's form fillable. You put all the student information up here. Depending on what they're doing, you just mark all the intended changes. Most frequently for me, that's a change of major. Occasionally it's a change of catalog year because I advise pre-biology. Sometimes it's also a change of advisor. And then you can make a note of what their major is. And then what happens down here is this is going to be listed and signed by the advisor for the major that they are switching into. So if they come to see me because they want to switch into biology, I would complete this and sign off on it for them. But if they are wanting to leave biology, I might get them, help them get started with this. But ultimately, they're going to need to go to whatever department program is going to be taking them in. And if you're not sure about that, there's a really good way to find out. And that is through the Student Success and Advising Office website. And there's this advising contact sheet. So let's imagine we wanted to find out who a student needed for biology. It's got all the information. Cinda DeVoe is our academic program administrator. We're going to give her those forms to file, but then we can see who all the different advisors are as well. So if, for example, a student is interested in pre-med, we'd want to make sure that they go see Dr. Baldsley. If they're not sure, he would also be a good person to talk to because he's the department head. But let's say maybe a student is interested in botany, that would be perhaps Dr. Howard. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of help them so they're not chasing around all over campus. This is a really helpful resource.
And with the changing majors, once the student has taken the new form to the correct department, that department will assign the student an advisor and get the form over to the registrar's office so that the student's curriculum is changed, and that way their degree tracks shows up accurately. A couple things of note with the change of major form is I try to keep copies of them. Oftentimes, if it doesn't make it from the department to the registrar's office and the student's emailing saying, why hasn't my degree tracks updated, or they haven't been assigned to you as an advisee, that can cause some frustration. So keeping record of when that was submitted so you can quickly submit it again. One thing to note is if the student is coming to you and they want to change into your major and they have an advising hold, you may not be able to remove that hold right away. One thing to note with Western Oregon University is we do require every student every term to meet with their assigned academic advisor. So if they're changing majors and that assigned advisor changes, then that may require a little bit of emailing with their current advisor. Mm-hmm. And Erin pulled up the advisor menu again. Mm-hmm. And when you have a student that you want to remove a hold for, you go to the same advisor menu. Instead of going to advisee listing, you go to removing advisor hold, and there'll be a checkbox there. You can select the advisee's name and remove it after you've met with them. There is a search bar, and you can enter a student's information, but if you get an error that says you do not have access to remove this hold, that's because you haven't been assigned as the advisor yet, then you can, oftentimes I'm just calling whoever their past advisor was and just saying, we've met, we're changing their major, can you remove the hold? On kind of that same note, if a student knows that their current major is not a good fit, but they don't quite have a what next, they're not necessarily need to stay in their current major. That is one of the resources the Student Success and Advising Office provides at Western is advising students who are exploratory. And just in case you can't see it on the slide, the website for Student Success and Advising is just woo.edu/advising. We have academic success advisors that are specifically focused on advising exploratory students. And this is a big area that we want to make sure students know it's okay that they don't know what they want to do yet. We'd rather them start the process of exploring earlier and being okay with that uncertainty so that they make a good decision than staying in the wrong major too long and then maybe having it affect their GPA because their classes didn't go very well, or they get 2 years into a major and then realize it's not a good fit. So if any students that are just not sure, they have questions, definitely having that conversation about why maybe it's not a good fit. But then if they need to have a further conversation that's outside the realm of knowledge area and they don't have a direct area, we welcome them to come see an advisor in office. We can actually change their major to exploratory while they're exploring, so they will have an assigned advisor in our office. And we work very closely with various resources and opportunities on campus and do training to try to really help these students have opportunities to explore. So there definitely is an area that I encourage students to be willing to explore, and usually they end up doing better if they're willing to do that earlier. So if you have any students that they're not doing well, it's not a good fit, but they just don't really know what they want to do or what the next step would be, that is a great opportunity for us to connect with our office.
However, at some point, students are going to pick a major that's a good fit for them. They're gonna stick with that major, and they're gonna approach their graduation date. So at that point, again, one of the things I want to make sure that I do is I'm double checking that they have all of their requirements checked off. One of the things that's really nice, especially as they get close and we use degree tracks, is if they want to, for example, figure out remaining requirements, like maybe I have a student who still needs to take their PE 131, they can check on this box and it'll pop up and it'll tell them what the class is, and it will give them the historic records of sort of when it's been offered. So they're likely to see here, oh, this class is offered pretty regularly, I shouldn't have too much trouble picking it up, as opposed to a class that might not be offered all that regularly. So that can be really handy. The other thing that's great is that the Student Success and Advising Office does provide guides to advising the liberal arts core curriculum, so students can look at those and see what classes they need as well. As the new general education program comes online, we will have similar guides to advising that particular program.
And the current guide is included in the handout on our website that's attached with this presentation.
So, but in the meantime, as students get closer and closer, they're going to want to prepare for graduation. And the easiest way to do that is to send them back to the University Registrar's Office website. And there's this fantastic turn-by-turn steps to graduation for undergraduate students. So making sure that they're aware that 2 terms before their graduation term, they should be applying to graduate, reminding them to always double check with their advisor to make sure that they have everything checked off in degree tracks, all the way up through what happens when they graduate. So this is a very handy resource to share with students so that they know what they need to be doing. And depending on your program, there may also be some test requirements. For example, I advise students who are oftentimes planning to apply to the Master of Arts in Teaching program. And so they have some testing requirements that they need to complete prior to application for that program. So making sure that they're aware of all those little fun quirks that are specific to your academic program as they get closer to graduation can be really helpful.
And kind of on that same note with going with what the purpose of the advising appointment is that really make sure that students are on track for graduation and not reaching their last year and realizing that they're 6 credits short or they're missing a key requirement. And so a big portion of the advising appointment opportunity is reviewing that degree tracks and seeing where they're missing areas. But kind of the bigger scope of that advising appointment is also getting them a connection with campus and just helping them be connected with resources. The Student Success and Advising Office, we work as a resource for all students in a lot of different areas. And so as you're meeting with students that, maybe they're struggling with a particular class, or maybe they are having some things going on, just to kind of make you aware of some of the other resources that are available through Office, but not only that, through campus. In the handout that's attached to the website with this PowerPoint, there's a list of common resources across campus, everything from helping students get more engaged, like through service learning, career development, to do maybe volunteer or career internships or things like that, to Student Health and Counseling Center, Office of Disability Services. There's a pretty broad range of resources across campus that the advisor can kind of serve as the key chain, so to speak, is connecting those students with those resources they either may not know exist or may be hesitant to go and explore because they don't know somebody there, so someone can help make the introduction. Student Success and Advising, a couple areas that we offer is we do have, we coordinate tutoring for some of the main general education opportunities. There is a separate writing center, science center, and computer science tutoring, as well as math tutoring. So our office with tutoring focuses a lot on common general education classes. We also offer a study skills tutoring option. So if a student just wants help with time management or note taking, but they don't necessarily have a specific class they're struggling with, they can meet with a tutor for that. They can also always meet with an academic success advisor to talk about study skills and that type of thing. We also have some resources on our website for students who have any questions about tutoring. They can schedule it online through WCS, the Wolf Connection System, or they can always just come and contact our office. And we're located in the Advising Center on the south side of the street across from the Warner University Center. Another resource with our office is as students, and this for faculty may apply also as you're teaching. If you have students that you're concerned about, they're not showing up to class, or they aren't turning in assignments, they aren't doing well on tests, you can create an alert through the Wolf Connection system to say, we're concerned about the student, and the academic success advisors in our office will reach out and make connections with that student to see what challenges they're facing and help them get connected to campus. Basically, whenever we can, we're trying to give the student as many connections to campus as possible to help them with being successful. And the Wolf Connection system allows us to maybe know which students to reach out to a little bit sooner to try to help them overcome any obstacles. So that's another area that our office works with. And then, as I mentioned, the academic standing, we also do teach a student success class. So if any students are interested in really in-depth skills for learning how to be a better student, we teach a class in that area as well.
So I think one of the things that's important there, as I oftentimes wrap up an advising session with students, is I will also remind them that while they are required to come and see me during that advising week, and I have an advising hold that I can use to force them to do so, they're not limited to that time. They're always welcome to stop back by, to send me an email. Occasionally during registration, for example, a class they thought they wanted to get into will be closed. They have a prerequisite error because of that funny little quirk in degree tracks where a course substitution won't sub out a prereq. So those kinds of things occasionally come up after we've finished our advising conversation for that term. So I like to make sure that they know that they're always welcome to come back and ask questions. And in fact, they're not bothering me when they do that. They're saving us both a lot of time and effort, because when they self-advise, if they make a mistake and something goes wrong, it's a lot more challenging for me and for them to go back and take care of that issue. Whereas if they just ask, we can usually figure it out together.
And a couple other helpful notes with the advising holds that are placed on students is that's something that the Student Success and Advising Office does facilitate. That happens the 5th week of every term. A student receives an email from our office that the advising hold has been placed, encouraging them to meet with their advisor. And then a couple things to note with holds is oftentimes students will have multiple holds placed on their account. They might have an advisor hold that's cleared by you, but they may also have a hold from admissions or a hold for doing sexual assault training or something from the business office. And so every time I'm meeting with the students, I also encourage them to look up their holds prior to the registration time and make sure they contact the office that placed the hold to get the hold resolved. And oftentimes those holds will be placed after the advising hold. And so whenever I'm meeting with a student, I always make sure to tell them, check before your registration time your holds. And students can do that by logging into the Wolf Web, and there'll be a student and the student records and then a view holds option. And even doing that the day before they register or the week before, so that they're not caught off guard and emailing saying, why didn't you remove my advisor hold? And we check and we did, but they had some other holds placed on there. So that's another thing I like to check when I'm meeting with students, is to just make them aware that there may be other holds and they should have received emails about it, but in case they missed that, to always check. And then advising, another piece that I've seen a lot of faculty advisors do will be to talk with students about when they will register, because it's assigned based on how many credits, but it's broken down into several different time slots based on their day. And so students can see their registration time also in Wolf Web. They receive an email about that. So just letting the student to watch for an email about their registration time, but also how to go into Wolf Web, click on student, click on registration, and it will tell them when their time ticket is. So they're not trying to register the day of. That's kind of leads into another, just with advising, it helps students to kind of just be aware of important dates and deadlines, like maybe when the drop deadline is, when the ad deadline is, and all of that information can be found on the main Western page, but also on the registrar's office page. So a lot of advising is just helping students be aware of some of those university policies and dates and deadlines, so that if they have concerns or challenges, that they're able to take care of those and not be emailing you the day after the withdrawal deadline saying, I didn't know that there was a deadline. And so those are just some resources to help with making students aware of when you're meeting with them.
So those are the sort of the basic things that may come up during an advising session. Every student is different, so every advising session is different. If you have questions, it's always good to talk to the more experienced advisors in your department. But just to reiterate that the Student Success and Advising Office is a wonderful resource that can be really, really helpful in getting your students succeeding towards graduation as well. And
I am always welcome to talk with people one-on-one for strategies, and we're hoping over time to be able to get more and more resources put together to create kind of a resource library for advisors, so that you don't have to try to remember everything. You can refer back to it. I do agree with Erin that if you have the opportunity to sit in with a current faculty advisor, maybe someone who actually advised some of the students you will be seeing to help with that transition, that's a great training opportunity. And just never being afraid to ask questions. It's one thing I've learned with this university is everyone's very willing to help. So rather than be unsure, feel free to reach out, the registrar's office, financial aid, any of those areas, just to try to help the student not be bounced around from office to office and get the resources from you as their advisor, and that there's a lot of resources available to help you, so that you don't feel like you have to know everything, but that you know who to reach out to if you have questions. And if you have any suggestions for further training that you would like to see, or discussions you'd like to have as advising, that is something I would like to hear, so feel free to email me. My email is weight, WEIGHTN, @woo.edu, or feel free to come see me over in the Advising Center.
And we wish you good success with advising.